Hi, welcome to my friendly gas-powered bike page. And if you follow my friendly gas-powered bike page, welcome back. It's been a while since I did a video. It's been winter time, and I don't build a lot of motorized bicycles in the winter time. Sell more parts to those who already have them that are getting through the winter time, but you don't sell a lot of them in the winter time. It's not my main occupation, just a little something I do on the side. Have been doing for 8-9 years now, because I like to help people that have no mode of transportation, at least make their life a little bit simpler and a little bit easier. I mainly focus on standard bikes, much like this one right here, just for people who want to go to the store or order a bicycle offline and put a motor on it and motorize it so they don't have to pedal everywhere they go and or walk anymore. Today is a special, for instance, this gentleman's bicycle had gotten stolen. It was his main source of transportation. Now he can't get to the doctor, the store, anywhere else he wants to go. So I took time out of my schedule, which is no big tragedy, and we're going to motorize this bike. So I thought I would share every step of the way on how to motorize this bike and the prep work that goes into it to help those who are thinking about building one themselves to hopefully make your process a little easier. I focus more on longevity of the bicycle more than I do top speeds. Longevity, in my opinion, is way more important than going 50 miles an hour on a motorized bike. They're not designed to do that. They're just designed to get you from A to B without doing a lot of pedaling. That's kind of a little misconception I think a lot of people have, that you can put a motor on this, make it go 60 miles an hour, and now you have a motorcycle. That is not the case. If you want your bicycle to last, you ride it accordingly, which is anywhere from 12 to 15 miles an hour, and you will get years of enjoyment and use out of it. If you speed it up and make it go super fast, you're not going to get a lot of longevity out of it. You'll be working on it all the time and or buying parts, which I find annoying. I would rather have longevity and keep my money in my pocket. That's just my personal opinion. Anyway, in this little series, we're going to walk you through every step of the way. This bike we just went and bought at our local store. Usually I order them online and I completely assemble the bike because I go through the bike from the front tire to the back tire. You cannot trust how the big box store assembled your bike. If you're going to just ride it around a campground, this would probably be sufficient. But if you're going to motorize it, I highly suggest you go over the entire bike, check every nut and bolt, grease the wheel bearings. A lot of times they don't have a lot of grease on the wheel bearings, and that is an important part because you're going to up the speeds of your bike, and upping the speeds of the bike puts a lot more wear and tear on your wheel bearings. So having said that little tidbit, we're going to get started, and I'm going to walk you through every step of the way. If you're building an El Luso, much like this one is, hopefully this video will 100% make it a lot easier for you to assemble your bike. If you're not doing the exact same bike, the general principle is the same through any cruiser bike, be it a Huffy Cranbrook or a Kent Bayside Cruiser, etc., etc. So, having said that, let's get started. Before we get started, obviously I have a customized engine stand bike rack that I made. When you make a lot of bikes, it's a lot easier to be able to sit on a crate or a rolling stool, and it's not so back-breaking on the old bones than trying to build it on the ground and the bike keep trying to fall over. And I understand everybody doesn't have one of these. And if you're just building one, why would you go through all that hassle of buying a bike rack or whatever to build one bicycle? But a cool little cheat thing that you can do if you happen to be in a garage with a normal 7-8 foot ceiling. I can't show you the 100% in my ceiling because it's over 12 feet tall where the rafters are. But if you have a garage that is not drywalled on the ceiling, you can take a ratchet strap, much like this one, hook the top of it, make a loop around your rafter on the ceiling, and hook that to itself like that. And then you can makeshift your own little lift, if you will. You can hook it to the seat, one to the seat and one to the handlebars or frame or wherever you can find that it will hook. And then you can hang your bike in midair and get it off the ground a little bit and make it a little easier for you to work on. Because when you remove the back wheel and it's just on a kickstand, it's really hard for the bike to stand up. Well, it doesn't stand up actually, and it just makes the job a little tougher for you. But these always come in 2 packs. So if you hook one down here somewhere or to the rack or wherever you find you can get your hook into, and one in the front, and have a couple of them, and then you can hang it in midair, and it might make the job a little bit simpler for you at home. It's just a friendly little advice tidbit. And it will keep your back from aching, being hunched over for hours building your motorized bike. Now that you have your bike in a comfortable position to work on, be it on a stand or however you've figured out how to do it to make it simple on yourself, or the hanging method I showed you earlier, which does help quite a bit. We are going to start by taking off the front wheel and greasing the front wheel bearings. And as I stated before, you never trust how the store put the bike together. And I have a perfect example that I noticed when I picked this bike up, and I haven't even pulled the tools out yet. Is this fender nut right there. Notice that is right from the store, and it is not tight at all, and my video is jumpy there, and I apologize for that. But yep. So that is a perfect example of what I was speaking of. One other tidbit before we get too far into this is some people prefer to take the fenders off to make sure they don't have any future problems with the fenders, vibrating, cracking, breaking, maybe not causing an accident. Some people say it does. Some people have had it happen. I personally have fenders on my bike, and I have for years, and I haven't had any problems. I would assume it all depends on how you treat your bicycle, but stranger things can happen. So I don't have any suggestion on the fenders. That is completely up to you if you want to keep them or you want to take them off in this process of pre-maintenancing your bike. Taking them off is the safest route, I would say. If they're not there, they can't cause a problem. Although you might get splashed on a little bit. God forbid you get caught in the rain or have to ride through any water or muck and mire. But that part is entirely up to you. As your bike builder yourself, you make that decision. I cannot make that decision for you. All right, having said that, let's get the front wheel off this dude and get the front bearings greased. That's where we're going to start. As I had stated before, we're going to start at the front of the bike, and we are going to work our way all the way to the rear of the bike, checking every nut and bolt and greasing every bearing from front to back. So I took my 15 millimeter, loosened my front axle, take the nut off because my basket is here, and I can't get that off without taking the nut completely off. So I will pry my basket arm off of there. Same thing on the other side. A little wiggle here and there. And get the bike wheel removed. And now we will head over to the bench, and I will show you the method I use to grease my bearings, because you have to be careful. These are not caged bearings, they are free bearings. So if you back that out too far, the bearings will fall out, and then you have to put them back in and or find them when they bounce all over your floor. So we're going to prevent that by being careful. Now that I have the front wheel reassembled on the forks, we know the bearings are 100% lubricated properly. Make sure you positively tighten those. That is important so your wheel doesn't come off. Now we are going to get our little hand tools out and check every nut and bolt and work our way to the back wheel. I will be stopping at the back wheel, and the next step of preparation has to do with installing the rear drive sprocket, lubing the back wheel, so we won't be tightening that part up, but we will be working our way from the front to the back, tightening everything else in this initial step. For this step, you're going to need 2 wrenches or a wrench and a crescent wrench. You're going to need some way to hold the other cone jam nut, and we're going to back this off 2 to 3 turns. Now, like I said, we want to be careful. We do not want to open it up too wide that the bearings can roll out on the ground. We just need enough so we can get the grease inside there. Now, I personally have a grease gun to grease zerts or that I use for equipment, but I have purchased a grease needle, which is really super handy, and you can get them at any hardware store, and it just pops in the end of your gun, and I can squeeze grease right in my bearings, and then turn them a little bit. If you do not have a grease gun, all is not lost. You can purchase little grease guns or use a heavyweight oil to lube your bearings. If the worst comes to worst, I have always said some lube is better than no lube. And then I will go to the other side and repeat. I will reach through, I was going to reach through the spokes, but no need. Push it down, spin them a little bit. Now I'll retighten my cones slash the bearings to get back into their race. I will check it. See, I have a little play left, so I have a little further to go. A little bit more. We don't want them tight. Got just a little bit of play, if you can see that. So about 1/8 to 1/4 of a turn more should probably get me there. I want to hold the wheel and make sure my axle has no play, and I have just a little bit. So we're going to keep going. My axle has no play back and forth, no shaking whatsoever. You want to feel just a little smidge of drag. And then you know you've got it right where it need be. But you hold your wheel, it doesn't shake back and forth, doesn't go in and out. Got just a smidgen of drag when you spin it. And now we know our front bearings are properly lubed. Okay, quite a reflection there. Now that I have mine personally bored out, pardon the smudges, I'll take care of that here in a minute. There's going to be more, so no use fooling with it now. But as you can see, plenty of clearance for my bearing cap to keep my grease in, the dirt out, and my wheel alive a whole lot longer. I just wish the factory that made those would do those holes big like that if you have a coastal brake bike, because if you do not have the proper equipment, it is a pain to do. Or buy the other CNC sprocket and hub mount. That's done for you. But this is the way I choose to do it. These are the aluminum hub mounts I choose to use because I've never had problem one out of one of these. Get my top half in there. Oh, little guy let go on me. That's all right. Okay. And that was helpful. So much for the magnetized, I guess. And yeah, let's just throw the wrench down too. One moment, please. All right. If I can get that in there without dropping it again, will be extremely helpful. Same thing with the hex head. It's just a little easier to screw in than with your fingers. Not a lot of room in there. The hub mounts also give you a lot of extra left and right room, because sometimes with that rag joint, you really only have one option for adjustment with those. And I'll explain that here in just a moment. Okay, got her finger tight. Good enough for now. With the rag joint, as you see, the rear gear here is beveled. So if I need more clearance from the tire, I have it on that way, and I notice I put it all together and I find out that I have no clearance between my chain and my tire. I gotta take that rag joint all apart, flip that bad fella over, which will counterset those teeth just a smidgen back for you. You can use these sprockets either way, for those who do not know, and it gives me a little more clearance for my tire. Vice versa, if I'm too close to the frame, I can flip that around, and then maybe I have enough clearance between my tire and my frame now. But either way, that's the adjustment you get with your rag joint. I'm going to choose to assemble that way. You know, as a matter of fact, being I have adjustment and I'm all the way faced this way, I think I'm going to put that on that way, because I can always take it in, but I can't take it out. So I'll get my nuts on the back, tighten them up, and then we're down to the brake arm and a little adjustment. Now it's time to install our rear sprocket. I have naturally, as I suggested a moment ago, went with the aluminum hub. That's what I'll be installing. But when you're new to the motorized bike world, a little hint that you're going to run into, well, not a little hint, it's just an unfortunate you're going to run into. I do not understand why they do not machine these a little bigger and offer you one for a freewheel hub or a coaster brake hub, but they do not. So if you're building a coaster brake hub, much like this one, you'll note this does not fit over your bearing cap. None of the stock ones do. You can purchase the CNC hub mounts. This one fits the standard sprocket, which I will get to how I make this function here in a moment. But anyway, you can get these with the CNC hub mount and the CNC aluminum sprocket. The bonus of buying those is the hole in the center is big enough to go over top of this. They do it to that. But with this particular hub, where you use the standard rear sprocket, you have to do the whole boring and make it bigger yourself, because you do not want to remove your dust cap from your bearings, because now your bearings are exposed to the elements. The grease will run out and your wheel will die prematurely. I've seen people cut the little caps down. I've seen all kinds of stuff. Get rid of this, put a piece of rubber, like biscuit, gasket, whatever you want to refer to it. That stuff just doesn't hold up through time. So if you have to figure a way to make this hole bigger so it fits over. Now I understand everybody doesn't have the same equipment as I have, and others may or may not have. So you have to grind it, however you do it. I have people send them to me and I'll bore the center out for you and mail it back to you. Or if you are by a machine shop in wherever you live, maybe the machine shop will take time out to bore that hole out for you. But it is necessary, can't even get that out, to not sandwich your wheel bearings in between that dust cover and the hub, because it just eats itself up, puts shavings in your bearings, and dies really sooner. So let me get this over to the machine and I will bore out that center hole. Okay, what we have so far, and it's a good thing that we did the prep work, because a few things on this bike were not sufficiently tightened. So we have greased the front wheel bearing. We have made sure that our front axle nuts are 100% tight, so our front wheel does not give us any problems in the future. Rolls smooth, greased completely, doesn't fall off. This gentleman decided he was going to keep the fenders. I always give the option, as I stated in the beginning, that is up to you, the customer, or the bike builder. But this gentleman decided to keep them, and glad we checked that, because as I showed you, that nut was not even remotely close to tight. That is why I say do not trust the big box store builds. They just slap them together. These weren't tight. So if he had put anything in his trusty basket to go home with, it'd have been rattling and shaking all over the place. Tighten up your gooseneck and your clamp here for your handlebars and your gooseneck to make sure your handlebars actually turn the front wheel. If that's loose and you get out there and hit some bumps with some speed, you'll find out the hard way. It might be a tragedy way. But if you do your tightening and your maintenance, you shouldn't have that problem. We also checked the crankshaft. Well, pedal cranks, I guess. It's a crankshaft, so to speak. Make sure our jam nut's tight. We don't have any play in our pedal cranks whatsoever. Always check your kickstand bolt. They are always loose. There's nothing worse than parking your bike on a wobbly kickstand to come out and find it on its side. Also, check the nuts of your seat. Nothing worse than a seat tilting forward on you when you're out and about and don't even have any tools with you. Also, check your pedals. In the past, the big box store has forgotten to tighten them correctly, and you get out there pedaling a few times to get the old bike started or what have you. Next thing you know, the pedal's wiggling itself loose, falling out on the ground. Also, tightened our fender at our bracket right here. Also checked our fender supports there, made sure they're tight. So we are down to removing the rear wheel and getting that prepped, and that should be our last step of prepping before we can get our motor kit out, sprawl that on a table, and start making this dude a motorized bike.